Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder All Weather here. Here's where we stand so far in the month of May on the overall average temperature anomalies. And for the most part, a good part of the western and Pacific Northwest have been average to slightly below average. And overall, the central and eastern two thirds, especially the Ohio Valley and getting into the mid Atlantic as well as in the Northeast, have been above average. And there's going to be a noticeable change as we head into the month of June. But for the later on this afternoon, here are the overall dew points. Been a crucial element on our moisture return and where the overall setups as far as like severe weather is going to take place. And then we've got a classic dry line type setup as we head into the heat of the afternoon with these, gosh, almost single digits at times in portions of New Mexico, but it's completely the opposite once you head into West Texas. And it's really along this border here where you see elevated dew points actually surging all the way up to the Canadian border. That puts this whole air mass into play. And that's exactly where the Storm Prediction Center has highlighted the activity as we bubble it up in the heat of the afternoon. We are going to be seeing a line of storms form along this boundary, likely east of the Continental Divide here, back into the Dakotas, as well as into western areas of Nebraska, getting into eastern Colorado, as well as into West Texas. That's the favored zone where you're likely to see some strong to severe thunderstorms later on this afternoon, right across that boundary. But going into the overall setup for the Northeast, we are going to be seeing a noticeable trend and a little bit of a difference because the noticeable trend is this trough that's going to be really kind of digging in for much of the Great Lakes and the Ohio Valley, and as well as in portions of the Carolinas and the Mid Atlantic and also the Northeast. That's going to bring some much cooler anomalies for them. Well, pretty much the rest of the country, at least the central part of the country, is still going to be in the warm sector, right? You got the southwest winds, you got the flow coming on off the Gulf of Mexico. That's fueling the fire for these storms development that essentially kind of blow up right along that dry line. So we head into tomorrow, we're going to be starting to see the transition of what's often referred to as northwest flow this time of year. It's pretty prevalent as we head into the month of June. We look for storm complexes that literally kind of blow up across the Rockies. That's exactly what's likely going to happen as we head into likely tomorrow morning. Another complex is going to blow it up into the morning hours around the areas of Kansas, back into Oklahoma, getting into the Texas Panhandle, as well as into portions of North Texas as we head into tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon. And that's exactly where the Storm Prediction Center has the elevated slight risk for severe storms as storms kind of blow up east of Denver here, and those areas across eastern Colorado back into western Kansas here, western Oklahoma, the Panhandle, as this another kind of a mesoscale convective system will likely form, and then fishtail from the northwest and down to the southeast with a round of severe storms that are likely a wind threat, a much higher wind threat than anything else. We'll have some larger hail, but likely not typically a tornadic type setup with this particular setup. But there's going to be another one that actually trails behind that one. So we look to have another convective complex after the afternoon round, but then we likely have an overnight round of more activity, likely blowing up across the continental, right here east of the Denver region, putting this whole area into play again. So we'll have the first one continue to move out, and that will be highlighted across over of Arkansas back into Louisiana, and then back behind it we'll have that second round that will likely form back into the same areas that will regenerate and actually could be even a little bit stronger because you have a little bit more your convective available potential energy to tap into by that time with that second complex. And yes, and as that dives down, that puts that same area back into play with that northwest flow and taking advantage of those higher dew points a little bit further south. So those puts those areas into north and central and eastern southeast portions of Texas with that elevated risk for severe storms, likely another mesoscale convective system that will be fishtailing across from northwest to southeast. bringing its own, high winds and some larger hail aspect to it. Again, it's a very low tornado threat. The main risk would be the very heavy rain associated with these mesoscale convective systems. I mean, overall, if you break it down, over the next 48 hours, we're going to be seeing these several storm complexes. First one today that's highlighted across, this boundary here with the dry line, but then we have multiple waves that will be coming across. Although you will get some showers and thunderstorms across the Dakotas through Nebraska, but I think the most intense activity is likely going to be right here where these several mesoscale convective systems likely form just east of the east of the Denver region, and then likely really feed themselves and gain strength as they continue to push off to the southeast. So likely those areas into Oklahoma, but a good part of north and central Texas and back into the Houston region again, as well as into East Texas, are going to be feeling the effects of these several rounds of storms that will be moving across. And we do have a little bit of instability up here across the Ohio Valley, but overall, these are much cooler anomalies up here with that trough. These are just going to be some light to moderate rain showers that you're going to have to contend with them. But yes, the instability is going to be high. It's not extreme by any of the stretch of imagination, but it will be high as the atmosphere is kind of resetting now. So this area has been inundated as of late, but you're going to go through a little bit of calmer period. Much of today is going to be overall dry, at least for a good part of what's going to be affected for your Thursday and Friday time frame. So yes, it's going to have some elevated CAPE values to contend with, tapping into over 3,000, which is easily 3 or 4 times what the average thunderstorm has to deal with. But overall, here's the wind aspect of it too, and this is one of my main concerns, because we are going to be seeing a lot more straight line winds that typically produces a lot of tree and fence damage, kind of what we saw just the other night with these systems. We're likely going to get kind of a similar setup again with some higher winds that we're going to be pushing across, and you can definitely see these ribbing aspects. Those are these squall lines, these mesoscale convective systems producing those higher wind gusts essentially as they come down from the Rockies through Oklahoma, but especially get their act together across the Panhandle, through the Wichita Falls region, into the Childress region, and then they move across the DFW Metroplex, getting into portions of Central Texas, back into East Texas, and actually goes down to the Houston Metroplex, and those will continue to move into Arkansas, as well as they continue to push all the way through the state of Louisiana with those heavier winds and the higher rain aspect with these storms. And they are going to have some larger hail with it too. So the elicity values are going to be, not extreme, but you are going to be seeing some larger hail going to be mixed in with these aspect of storms that kind of blow up, on the eastern side of Colorado there, but especially get their act together across the Panhandle. Some of these could be some larger hail kind of mixed in with the heavier rains, wind threat that's likely going to unfold. So definitely be on the lookout with these convective complexes, over the next 48 hours, because it definitely appears to be a bumpy ride, as you're underneath one of those systems. But yeah, it really doesn't end there, folks, because going into Friday, along with the severe aspect, you got a heavier rain aspect of it too. So you got the higher dew points, you got just the climatologically this time of year, it just rains a lot down there. But this time we have a much more active subtropical jet, and definitely the water content values have been easily 2 inches per hour type range. That's why we've seen so much flash flooding across this region, and we're likely going to be seeing pockets of that again. So yes, areas with that convective complex that highlights across Missouri, back into Arkansas, as well as into Oklahoma, a good part of Texas again, going into Louisiana, lighter amounts as you swing further north up into Iowa. But then going into Saturday, as you head into your weekend, it's not like that extreme. I mean, the temperatures definitely are warm. It's definitely hot as in the desert Southwest, but it typically is this time of year. So overall, it's not terribly too bad, but it's just the overall dew points as you head further south that make it feel a lot hotter than it actually is, because that has not gone away, and I don't really feel that is going to away, because you're still going to be remaining dry. It's been difficult to bring in any moisture down here across the Southwest, and I don't really see that changing at all. So for much of the central parts of the U.S., you're still going to be in that flow. The big difference is these troughs that are coming in, from the into the Ohio Valley and much of the Mid Atlantic is actually going to keep them on the cooler and more stable side. It's just the unstable side across the middle part of the country, especially those areas across the South and much of the Central Plains are going to be kind of in the bullseye, if you will, of the more favorite activity for heavier rain and the severe storms. That's exactly what we even see on Saturday too, as these systems will be kind of, you have the dry aspect out west, you got drier aspects out east. It's just really the middle part of the country across much of Texas and Louisiana and Arkansas and into Oklahoma, a good part of Kansas there, into Missouri, back into Iowa, as those dew points surge all the way to the Canadian border. Yeah, it's going to put those areas even to Wisconsin back into play for some of those stronger thunderstorms, heavier rain. So, but yeah, the pattern kind of resets on Sunday, just more or less kind of regenerates, really. So you got the ridge still building down here in Mexico, and at times it's able to shift a little bit further north, right? So overall, it's going to be a quieter day on Sunday, but it's also more of a reset day, as well as the sun comes out and have more instability that likely bubbles up, in the atmosphere, and that just goes into Monday, and that's just going to fuel the fire again as we head into Monday with a renewed surge of moisture, tapping into that Gulf of Mexico again. So it puts this whole area across the middle of the country from essentially Texas back into the, Wisconsin region back into play again, of more heavy rain potentially and some stronger thunderstorms, while much of the west and the east kind of remain on the drier side. And I think that actually goes in even to next week, because we see another significant trough that really will be really building in across a good part of the Great Lakes and the Ohio Valley and much of the Mid-Atlantic, with much cooler anomalies. So you're actually going to feel it kind of a big way, for at least June standards, comparably what you felt like in the month of May. It's going to be kind of a noticeable change with that cooler air mixed in and into the atmosphere. But again, it's going to be a noticeable change out west, as much of the ridging will be coming back into play. And so instead of those cooler anomalies like you felt most of May, you're going to be feeling the ridge coming back with those higher temperature anomalies, and we start to heat up for those areas out west. So that will definitely be a noticeable change as we head into at least the first part of June. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you like this video and definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch my next update where I protect you before and after the storm.